Am I the a-hole for telling my parents they're bad parents to me? I, 16 female, am the oldest of 5, and my parents have a hard time supporting our family. It wasn't always like this, but when I was around 7 or 8, my dad's company folded and life changed a lot. At the time, my mom was pregnant with my 3rd sibling. Life changed a lot, but mostly for me. As the oldest, they figured I should make sacrifices so my siblings wouldn't have to, and I went along with it for a long time. But in the last 2 years, it has been making me bitter and resentful. I think the reason I feel this way is I had a field trip come up that my whole class was going on, and I wanted to go so bad. It would have been the first field trip in 6 years, and it would have been great to go with my friends. Before, there were always others who didn't go, but that year everyone was going. And my parents couldn't make it work because my younger siblings had theirs coming up. It was like a switch flipped, because before, I just kind of accepted that as the oldest, I needed to be more understanding. But suddenly, I wasn't okay with it. I don't feel like I should be sacrificing again and again so my siblings can have a childhood with fun stuff. I think we should all get something on occasion. But my parents didn't want to listen then when I tried to bring it up, so I dropped it. With everything in the past year, stuff has been even more rough. I ended up getting a job during COVID so I could maybe treat myself on occasion and save for stuff my parents couldn't save for. I hit a breaking point 2 weeks ago. My sister's birthday was coming up, and my parents' money that was saved for her gift went onto the electrician instead. And since they know I work, they asked me to give them my money for her gift. Not let them borrow, no talk of even paying me back. Just give it. I said no, and they told me to think of my sister. I snapped and told them I was tired of them being better parents to my siblings than me, and it was clear they didn't give a damn unless it's them. Of course, it resulted in a fight, and now I'm being blamed. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Your parents now take you for granted. You are not the 3rd parent. Is there any other adult relative you can lean on? Do you have plans for the future? If you're planning on college or extensive post-high school vocation training, you need to make sure you take care of that. And don't let your parents demand you sacrifice that future to take care of your siblings. Do not give them the money. I'm betting they didn't do anything for your birthday. I can't help but wonder if Opie's parents will expect Opie to work after school to pay for siblings' college. Not an a-hole. They should be treating all their kids equally. You didn't have a field trip in 6 years. They should have made an effort to make sure you got one. What did they get for you for your birthday? I'm guessing nowhere near as much as they want to spend on your sister? As soon as it is legal to do so, make sure they have no access to your money. In some countries it is 18, but in others it is less. Hopefully that is the case for you. And while they can control your bank account, hide the money elsewhere and safe enough so they can't accidentally find it. Not an a-hole. Your parents shouldn't have had more children than they can afford to raise, and you have every right to point this out. I'm really sorry you're in this situation, and I hope you get to go on your trip. Exactly. What were they thinking? That more babies would help their financial problems? Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my wife I warned you when our son got a lock for his room? So here's the problem. My son Simon, 16, moved out of the room he used to share with his little brother and got his own room a few months back. Ever since, he's been complaining about his mom barging in without knocking and interrupting his sleep and studying, sometimes when he's changing. I know that she's his mother, but he says he's got his own room and has a job and is learning to become an independent adult, but doesn't feel like his privacy is being respected even when that's his mom. He says he's not a kid anymore and is entitled to at least get a knock on the door before she comes in. He was getting tired of her not listening to him, so he came to me and said, Dad, you need to help me set some clear boundaries with Mom. So I spoke to her about her need to knock before entering Simon's room. She was like, What? And no, we're family, not strangers. Do you really expect me to foolishly knock on the door 5 times a day? That's ridiculous. Also said, Who knocks doors in their own home? I told her my family, for instance. She made a face, then went on a rant about how my family hate each other, and the way they treat each other like they were strangers is shameful. I told her family are strangers. It's about respecting one's privacy. We had an argument about it, and I told her if she wasn't going to stop with the barging and refuse to knock on the door before entering, then our son will get a lock. She did it again at 11 p.m. She barged in when our son was asleep. He jumped up because he got scared. Once he told me this, I told him to go ahead and get a lock and pay for it with his own money. There was literally no other way. My wife saw it and got upset. And my brother was visiting when she was raising her voice at me, questioning if I really went ahead and got a lock for Simon despite her disapproval, and said that I caught her off guard. And it's not okay because this teaches our children that they can manipulate one parent into doing what they want. I told her that A, Simon got the lock, not me, and B, I already warned her about the possibility of him getting a lock because he was getting tired of her boundary crossing, so she should have expected this outcome. She mentioned the same above points in her defense and said locks mean secrets, and that's not good. My brother was sitting watching while she was complaining. She began chewing him out when he asked her to let Simon keep the lock and said it wasn't a big deal. She stopped talking to me and Simon till we removed the lock, but I have no intentions in doing that. Was I at fault for my stance? I think your wife is a Nahal, but the way you handled it with your wife was cowardly. You supported what your son did. In fact, you told him to do it, but then you played stupid by essentially saying he paid for it. I had no part in it. If you believed in your son's position, you should have supported that to your wife. In fact, if you felt so strongly, you should have told her the next time you do that, I will personally install a lock on his door. Everyone sucks here, except Simon. I agree. You sort of threw your son under the bus here. Sorry that your wife didn't handle her end well. It's totally respectful to knock on doors even in your own home. My 3-year-old has no problem with this concept, but your son needed more backup than you gave him. Everyone sucks here. Yo, seriously. My 3-year-old knocks, and we knock before we go in the bathroom to help her wipe. Sure, privacy is a bizarre concept in terms of she doesn't have secrets, really. But you model the behavior you expect from them, and it pays off. When you think they're asleep. The mom in this post is going to wonder why her children don't visit or call her, talk to her about stuff when they're adults / out of the house. And this is part of the reason. Not Dayhal. So, do you have intimacy with your wife with the door open? Do you shower with the door open? Poop. There are reasonable things that one does in private that even a mother does not need to know about, much less see. Especially if you're a 16-year-old dude with raging hormones. Not Dayhal. What the hell? Why is this such a big deal for her? It's unreasonable to put up a fight against someone who's telling you to just knock before entering their private space. Good on you for advising him to get a lock. Also, why is she going to his room at 11 at night? Has she always acted like this, or is it new behavior? It's a big deal for her because she feels her authority as his mother is slipping away, and she doesn't like it. I had kids young, and both my and my ex-wife's primary identities were parent. As the kids got older, I worked to transition away from that, but she found herself very adrift as a mother who didn't have young children anymore, and she kind of lost her way. Maybe something like that is happening here. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my daughter go on a diet? My wife and I have been married for 17 years. We have a 14-year-old daughter, and we have 4 other children. Our daughter is a beautiful girl, and she was quite skinny when she was young. But since entering her teenage years, she has gained a little weight. She is by no means fat, or even overweight, but just not as skinny as she was when she was a kid. She's tall at 170 centimeters, 5'7", and weighs 64 kilograms, 143 pounds, with BMI of about 22, which is not considered overweight. But my wife is concerned because of her weight gain from when she was 12 to now. She does ballet and gymnastics, so she stays active. However, my wife is taking a more drastic approach and wants to put her on a diet while she's home for the summer holidays. My wife so far started nudging her to eat healthier. Last dinner, during supper, as my daughter asked for another slice of pie at dessert, my wife made a face and told her you've had enough. My wife has also told our cook not to make her any desserts or unhealthy fried snacks. She is also working with a dietitian to make a weight loss plan for her. My daughter seems to have noticed her mother's disapproval, and their relationship has become strained. It doesn't help that my wife keeps mentioning how thin our younger daughter, 11, is. I think part of this stems from my wife's background as a fashion model. She has been underweight for her entire life. When she was in her teens/early 20s, she was skeletal. She was 180 centimeters, 5'11", and 53 kilograms, 116 pounds, at her lowest weight. Now she is a healthier weight, but still very thin. I butted heads with my wife today after she got upset at our daughter for getting ice cream with a friend. She said this was her 4th time this week eating ice cream, and that she needs to be more serious about eating better. I told my wife she's been controlling and making our daughter self-conscious. My wife said she needs to toughen up and make better choices, or else she will end up fat. Of course, this conversation was not in earshot of our daughter, but still, I was shocked at my wife for saying that. I agree with encouraging her to make healthier choices, but flat out vetoed the idea of putting her on a diet plan with the goal of losing weight. She called me an enabler and accused me of spoiling her. Now for the top comment. Not today, Hal. Your wife needs to shut up before she gives your daughter an eating disorder. I'd honestly give an ultimatum at this point. How is the daughter in a situation similar to this one? My mom bullied me into developing anorexia. Same, bulimia. Anti-A, anti-A, anti-A. Please, don't let your wife do this. She's steering your daughter towards a lifelong and healthy relationship with food. She's literally a teenager. She's supposed to weigh more than she did 2 years ago. She's growing strong and her body's maturing. Of course she weighs more. Your wife, from her background, probably has her own issues with eating. Do not let her pass on her own insecurities to your daughter. Also, she does gymnastics and ballet. Muscle weighs more than fat. Your wife seems to think that if you're not supermodel stick thin, you're fat. That's extremely unhealthy outlook to have, and even worse to pass on to your daughter. Not today, Hal, and do not let your wife do this. Not today, Hal. Your wife is driving your healthy and athletic daughter towards self-esteem issues and a possible eating disorder. Your former fashion model wife is obsessed with being model thin, which more often than not is underweight, which isn't necessarily healthy. Your daughter is a growing, adolescent dancer and a gymnast, which means that she's not only going through hormonal changes, but as an athlete, her body mass has more muscle, which is heavier on a scale. Your wife needs to be less focused on the appearance of thinness and numbers on a scale and more about your daughter's overall health. Have your wife talk to your daughter's doctor and go with her medical advice. You may also want to have your daughter talk to a therapist. Good luck. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for rejecting a birthday party that has to be shared with my sister? My 15 female, sister 12 female, and I have birthdays 1 month apart. Mine in June and hers in July. The other night, my parents told me they couldn't afford for both of us to have birthday parties, or in my case have a night at a movie with some friends and a sleepover after. So they have decided we should celebrate together, at the house, with their friends and mine. I'll be 16 and she'll be 13. That sounds like a hellish birthday celebration. Hanging around a bunch of 12/13-year-olds, and my sister annoying me the whole time, because every birthday, she insists on me playing with her or bouncing her in the bounce house. And if it's supposed to be about me too, then I don't want that stuff. So I told my parents it was okay, I didn't need to celebrate. I'd rather just let it be her birthday party. They're mad because my sister was so excited by the idea. They told her a week before me, and now I've said no and she was already expecting it. They're also mad because I showed no excitement. They asked if there was any way to change my mind, so I said, what about just a sleepover for me separate from the joint party? And they said no, and why not have my friends sleep over that night after the party since my sister will be doing the same? We did that once, just 2 regular sleepovers, and my sister and her friends took over the whole thing and wouldn't stop bugging us. My parents think it's unfair to turn down a party that would include both of us, and said I should be grateful for any birthday party. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole, and your suggestion of a sleepover for me separate is a good one. It costs next to nothing to have friends sleep over. Whatever food/cake expenses are there would have been more or less built into the joint party anyway. If you were turning 3 and 6, fine. If you were turning 30 and 33, fine. The 3 years between 13 and 16 are a chasm. Hope your parents reconsider, and if they do not, pick the lesser of two evils. Having the joint party or having no party. Happy birthday in any event. The lesser of two evils is definitely not having the party. At least in my eyes it is. Would one of your friends host you that night? Acknowledged. It is super rude to ask. If a sleepover would make you happy and commemorate the night for you, and get you away from a bunch of 13-year-olds at no expense to your parents, it may work out for everyone. Not Daehal. If they wanted to celebrate you, they'd do something you wanted. They want to get credit for celebrating you when it's all about your sister. Not Daehal. This above post is right. I had to share a birthday party with my brother the entire time growing up, because his birthday was 364 days behind mine, and the party swiftly became all about him, only son. It was a time of celebration for him. Cake, presents, etc. For me, not even a cake. No cards, no presents, because my birthday happened to be the next day. This happened each and every year. And when I left home, they totally ignored my birthday. Not even a phone call. It starts with a shared birthday and goes downhill from there. Not always, but they rarely turn out well. OP is stand your ground. Your parents don't have to spend money. A cake can be made at home. A sleepover is inexpensive. Don't let this shared birthday party happen. It builds resentment between siblings rather than fosters care and happiness. One of you, either you or your sister, will feel left out/abandoned. First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my parents I hope their decision haunts them in death? My twin and I are the oldest of 5 siblings, all in our 20s. Our parents have always called me the good son, and have always looked out for my siblings. This includes my twin. My twin is the kind of person who can't hold a job, but it's never his fault. Despite constantly calling out and faking illness, he always takes but never gives back. You get the picture. But we always just brushed it off as his family. I, however, stopped with the enabling behavior. Recently, I was discussing my parents' wills with them. My twin and I don't make that much, but we get by. Our other siblings make okay to decent money. My parents told me that they intended to leave the house and a good amount of money to my twin. The rest of us would get equal amounts of everything else. I asked them why they would give so much to the kid who has done nothing but leech off them, and never helped when they needed it, despite talking about how he would any other day, but conveniently not the day they ask him. They shrug it off with, "He's our kid, and we know you can't carry him forever with how he's acting, so we might as well give him a safety net." I tried to protest, saying that their final gesture was basically further enabling him. I myself have stopped defending this guy. He is barely hanging by a thread, and he needs to learn how to make it on his own. I think this information would just make him smug and complacent, but my parents won't see it my way. I blew up at them, saying that they'd better hope this decision doesn't haunt them in death. Especially because my sister just finished her chemo and is still paying off her medical debt. The amount she and the rest of us being left would cover some of it, but still leave a bit for her to pay off herself. If anyone deserved to have a house and that much money, it's her. My parents later told my other brother their side of what happened, and he thinks that although twin sucks, it's ultimately mom and dad's money and house, so it's their choice. I think my frustration at the situation is justified, but I probably should have calmly explained it to my parents. Am I the a-hole for that outburst? Now for the top comments. I think your parents are pretty awful for worrying about the financial stability of a healthy moocher than they are about a child struggling to beat cancer. It is their money and they can do anything they want with it, but they look/sound horrible. As long as you are arguing that your sister should get more due to her vulnerability and not to increase your own inheritance, not the a-hole. Maybe you and your other siblings can donate your portions or part of your portions to her in order to help, if/when the time comes. Not the a-hole. I personally hate when parents play favorites in wills. It sets up terrible relationships after the last parent passes. I hope they reconsider. Yes, especially when it involves rewarding the slacker offspring. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole, but remember this conversation when they need help in their old age. Really good point. I just hope the inheritance stuff doesn't extend to how they currently treat the daughter fighting cancer. Next story. Am I the a-hole for kicking my friend out of my car and telling her to never call me for a ride? A little backstory. I, 24 male, have a car rock. It used to be my grandfather's, and he would always have it in his car as a lucky totem, and had it for about 30 years, according to my mom, but he passed away when I was around 5. I don't have much to remember him besides a few pictures of us, his ring, a knife, and his rock. When I turned 18, my mom gave me the knife, ring, and rock because my grandfather wanted me to receive these on my 18th birthday. I keep his knife in my room, wear the ring every day, and in the past 6 years I've had kept that rock in my car too and kept it as a lucky totem as well. Sometimes when I drive, I'll have the rock in my hand and just rub my thumb over and it kind of gives me peace of mind. I don't really know how to explain it in words, I guess. So on to the story. This happened last night. My friend Jane, 26 female, car is currently in the shop for repairs of an accident. She got rear-ended and it's messed up her whole back end. So the past week, she has either been Ubering or asking friends to pick her up when her shift is done, and that's around 7:30 p.m. Her work is about 30 minutes away from me and she lives about 10 minutes from me. So last night, she called me at 7 and asked me if I could pick her up, and so I said sure, no big deal. So I picked her up and everything was fine, until I picked up my rock and started rubbing it. Jane asked what was in my hand. I showed it to her and said, "This is my lucky rock. I sometimes rub it whenever I drive." She asked to hold it and I gave it to her. She told me that the rock is stupid, and before I could say anything back, she threw it out the window. I screamed, "What the hell? Why did you do that?" Jane said, "Rocks are stupid and lucky items don't work." At this point, I'm probably 5 minutes away from her house, so I pulled over in a grocery store lot and asked her to get out. Jane asked why I was making a big deal about, so I told her the meaning behind the rock. And finally, I said, "Until you find that rock and give it back to me, never call me for a ride, and you're not allowed in my car again." She ended up getting out of my car, and I drove to the vicinity where she threw it at, and I spent about 2 hours trying to find it. During those 2 hours, friends from our group called me asking what happened, and I explained my side. Most of the group knew the significance of the rock because I've given them rides before and they asked about it. Those ones are on my side, but the last few are calling me the a-hole because I left a woman alone to walk home in the dark. I do feel guilty for kicking her out, and I feel like I could have handled the situation better. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for kicking my friend out of my car and banning her from entering my car over a rock? Edit. I will update if I do or don't find a rock. Thank you everyone for the kind words. It really means a lot. I haven't found it yet, but I'm getting a group together to help me search for it Friday. A few people have asked for updates, so I'll probably give a more detailed one on Saturday or Sunday. Now for the top comments. I hope you find your rock. It costs $0 to respect someone and their property, and she couldn't even do that for a friend that went out of their way to help her. Not the a-hole. I didn't find it last night, but I'm going back out today when the sun is out, so hopefully I can find it. This might be silly, but you should try calling your local police station, not 911, but the actual station, and asking them if they have any canines who need some extra training or something, and then tell them your story and say you're hoping they'll be able to sniff off the rock. They might dismiss you and the story as silly, but if framed as extra training, they might go for it since the rock would be coated in your scent and oils as would the surrounding rocks from your initial search, but the main rock should have the strongest scent to it. Not the a-hole. Who asks for something for the sole purpose of disposing it like that? You are doing her a favor. She can keep her opinions to herself for 30 minutes. I would expect an apology before speaking to her again, and no more rides until that rock is found. She tried calling me today a few times to apologize, but I've been ignoring all her calls. I probably wouldn't return them. She doesn't seem like a very good friend. Probably for the best she showed her true colors, even if what she did was absolutely disgusting. Yeah, I don't plan on calling her back, and I think this will end our friendship. Only thing that might salvage this is if she finds that rock. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not considering my brother-in-law, my former school bully, family? I, 31 female, currently have a sister-in-law, 31 female, who isn't speaking to me or any other members of my family because she's angry that I do not consider her husband, 31 male, family. Background. Future brother-in-law and I started school together in 6th grade. He and his best friend bullied me and my friends relentlessly. During that year, I had a misfortune of having every class with them, so it was a constant occurrence. I would go home and cry most days, and going to school was misery. During high school, I only had one class with brother-in-law, so we had almost no contact and never spoke to each other those 4 years, and I thought after graduation I would never see him again. Oh, how wrong I was. Long story short, after high school I met my husband, now 30 male, who is bully/brother-in-law's younger brother. We started dating and got engaged young. Brother-in-law freaked out and told husband he could do better than me, that he was ruining his life by marrying me, he was going to end up divorced, etc. Fast forward 9 to 10 years, husband and I have master's degrees, are happily married, 2 kids, etc. After almost zero contact during the college years as we were in different states, brother-in-law and his wife moved to our city while he is doing his medical residency. Not only that, they move in across the street because they like our type of house better than any of the other ones they look at. So family dinners with my parents-in-law and them become a regular thing. They end up having a kid, so now we do cousin get-togethers, etc. Brother-in-law and I rarely ever directly speak to each other. We mostly just inhabit the same space and are cordial. No one ever brings up the past. After a disagreement with brother-in-law's wife a couple months ago, she blew up and said it's like I don't even consider my brother-in-law family, and she thought I had gotten over my dislike of him. I told her I absolutely did not consider him family, and that's never been a secret. She hasn't spoken to me since, and it's causing contention with the parents-in-law who want us to be one big happy family. Pretty much everyone thinks that the bullying was a long time ago and I need to get over it, especially because his family. I contend that I don't need to, and that being cordial to him is fine, and the best it's going to get. Am I the a-hole for still holding a grudge and not considering brother-in-law family? Not the a-hole. Has he ever apologized for how he treated you in middle school? That's how the reconciliation process starts, not by you letting it go. No. Many years ago when he was still just dating his wife, she told me that he told her some of the stuff he would tease me with, but he was never going to apologize for what he did. Then no, not an a-hole. He hasn't grown up. He's still a bully. Brother-in-law freaked out, told husband he could do better than me. He sounds like such a charmer. Not an a-hole. You are being polite to him, which frankly is graceful in the circumstances. If he had apologized to you of his own initiative, and if he had seemed genuinely contrite, then it might have been time to try to forget the past, since kids are a-holes. But not only has he not apologized, he still regards you as less than him. So you are absolutely not an a-hole. Not an a-hole. But why did you marry his brother? The info that his older brother was my abuser would have sent me running for the hills. I married him because he's a wonderful person and nothing like his brother. I struggle to believe they grew up in the same household. We were also friends before I even knew who his brother was. Would it have been better to drop him and refuse to have anything to do with him once I found out who his brother was? I know if someone suddenly stopped being friends with me just because they found out my sister was a jerk, I would feel that's unfair. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my husband to get over the fact that my parents call our daughter by a nickname? My husband and I have an 8-month-old daughter named Karina. We loved the name Karina from the get-go and decided on it before she was even conceived. Important context, my husband is white and I'm Punjabi. I'm the only one of my siblings and cousins to have married a white person. My family's fine with it. But it's definitely a noteworthy thing because I'm the only one. This cousin is tall, this cousin loves to go hiking, this cousin married a white guy. Lol. My parents fawn over my husband and my sister's husband because in Punjabi culture, it's normal to flatter your daughter's husband. I guess in the olden days it was to make sure she didn't get returned to original owner. So my husband has always had a really positive relationship with my parents. When our daughter was born, immediately my family noted that Karina sounds close to the Punjabi name Kiran, so they jokingly called her Kiran and it stuck right away. It's not a joke anymore. They say it so naturally that it's legit her name to them. I never thought anything of it. All of my nieces/nephews have Punjabi names that we say with a Punjabi accent even when we were speaking in English. Everyone on my side calls her Kiran exclusively. My husband noted a few months ago that he doesn't like it. But I told him I don't think it's a biggie. He said we named her Karina, and I said okay, that's what 90% of the people in her life will call her. It's not like it's gonna cause some identity crisis. Yesterday, when my mom was visiting, my husband randomly says, I'm tired of you calling her by another name. She is our child, not yours. You need to respect that if you want to see her. If any of you are Punjabi or from another family-oriented ethnicity, you know that speaking to a parent figure like this is, oh my god, no. Like WTF. Stunned silence. My mom left immediately. She told my dad and he was pissed. He told my brothers and they were damn near seeing red. Again, for Punjabis, someone speaking like that to your mom is the epitome of fighting words. I told my husband 2 things. 1, he needs to get over the nickname. It's not that deep. It's not gonna cause an identity crisis and there's no damn control to fight over. My parents see our daughter maybe twice a week and just to play and spoil her, aka normal grandparent stuff. 2, he can never, ever speak to my parents like that. Any issue with them needs to go through me. I think we can salvage things from here, but if he ever said something like this again and it got back to my siblings, things would go south real quick. He is mad that I'm not defending him or taking his side. I've listened as he explained her birth name is Karina. That is her identity. We can't let other people change her name. And I legit don't see a valid point. Our daughter is lucky enough to have a huge family that want to spoil her. Why mess with that? You're the a-hole. Imagine if this was the other way around. If you have given her an Indian name and your husband's family was constantly westernize it and refused to call her with the original name, all hell would break loose. Racist would be heard in every sentence. How he doesn't respect your culture, yada yada yada. Well, that's exactly what you do. You also said your husband had to go through you and not speak to your parents like this. He actually did, and you dismissed him. You are the a-hole again and again. They also said that he had brought it up to her, and the grandmother is something that bothered him before and everyone ignored him. Exactly. I don't know why she chose her husband if he is always going to come second. You're the a-hole. Your husband is raising a child. Concerned just because it sounds the same, it is not the same. You are saying he doesn't have the right to express discomfort over a nickname they chose because they think it's close enough. Newsflash, this man is the father of the child you made together. He does have the right to say something about it, and he doesn't have to go through you to talk to them. You don't even describe what the 2 names mean. After reading all the comments, I'm going with you're the a-hole. Because you don't seem to get that it's not just your child. Your husband is fully allowed to have an opinion and is allowed to voice that opinion. Any issue with them needs to go through me. Except he shared his issue with you and you did nothing. Because you don't think it's a biggie. But he does, and he's allowed to. You want him to respect you and your family and their culture, but you aren't respecting him because it's a white person thing, I guess. First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my parents it's their fault my sister and I don't have a relationship and they should reflect on their failings as parents? I, 24 female, was spoiled by my parents in early childhood. I got everything I wanted and had little to no boundaries. I was also the youngest of 2. My sister is 4 years older than me and was treated pretty badly by our parents. Her toys were given to me if I even looked at them as a toddler. My favorite foods were chosen over hers, and I got to take her blankets and clothes and other stuff. This was until maybe I was 6, and honestly the only reason it probably stopped is because my taste changed a lot. But my parents never considered what that would do to our relationship. Spoiler alert, it made her resent me, hate me even. And today at 24 and 28 years old, we have not spoken in 10 years. I have not seen her in 6 years. The last piece of communication we had was when she told me she never wanted to hear or speak to me again. My parents have never understood, and honestly, it pisses me off. I am very detached from them because I know they ruined any chance I ever had at having a sister relationship with mine. They also could have turned me into a pretty horrible person, which I hate thinking about. I can't even blame my sister for how she feels because I would imagine it's hard even as an adult to figure all that out when you were always the scapegoat of the family. I last spoke to my parents a month and a half ago, and they were going on and on about my sisters and my relationship or lack thereof, and how they could not understand why we wouldn't even try to get along. And I couldn't believe it. So I told them they should look at their failings as parents and the blame they have in all of this. They were shocked. I told them they messed things up, and they still don't get why. They said I was rude. My uncle, who I'm close to, said he understood saying what I did but could have handled it better. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. You say this stopped when you were 6, and assuming your sister left immediately at 18. You being at that point, there are at least 8 years of your relationship and interactions with her that are completely left out of this post that would have an effect on this. So what was your behavior toward your sister during that time? I tried to get closer with her. I wanted us to hang out and stuff, but she rejected me. I remember giving her back the old stuffed bear she used to treasure, because when I realized even that was hers, I felt awful, but she didn't want it back. By the time I truly realized what was going on, the damage was done, and eventually I just hoped that eventually things would get better. So while I didn't take her stuff, I didn't try to force myself on her either. You're getting a lot of flack here, and I'm sorry for that. You didn't choose how you and your sister were raised. You were not at fault for your parents' favoritism. It sounds like you recognized what was going on and tried to make amends. But I can understand why her treasured bear was a tainted memory, and by extension, why she can't bring herself to have a relationship with you. You seem to also respect your boundaries there. I feel for your sister, and I also feel for you. You lost your sister through your parents' actions, and now you have to hear them whine to you that you guys aren't closer? No wonder you flipped on them. They needed to hear it. I'm so impressed that by 14 you were able to recognize how messed up your family dynamic was, and as a young teen you were able to turn yourself around and become such a compassionate person. You were raised to treat your sister badly, and that was the only dynamic model to you. But you snapped out of it and recognized that she's not to blame for her coldness towards you. I honestly would send your sister a letter. Explain that you know and understand why she resents you, and that while you won't force her to do so, you would really like to have a relationship with her. Suggest a therapy session. The worst that could happen is she says no. Don't send multiple letters, just one. Info. There's a lot omitted here. If any favoritism stopped when you were 6, that's a long time for her to continue to resent you. What happened when you were older? What was your relationship like when you were teens? It sounds like the taking stuff stopped, but not the favoritism. You can make sure to always cook one kid's favorite meal, put a little more effort into their birthday, etc. Rare to see the golden child admit to their status, and use their status to tell their parents that the favoritism has caused long-term damage. Since the scapegoat child will always be ignored when the favoritism is brought up. Not the a-hole from this scapegoat. You tried. Most golden children never realize, and if they do, never bother. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom I'm not going to be her second choice just because my brother died? Me, 23 male, and my mom don't have the best relationship. My parents broke up when I was 2. My mom was trying to do college, so I was mostly with my dad and she'd have me every weekend. When I was 6, she got married, and then a year later had my half-brother, Tommy. After that, she was canceling our meetups or days I go over there because she was busy. Missing out on school stuff, and then birthdays. I barely saw her after that, and her reason always was being busy with my half-brother. I never even met him, like at all. I could also tell when I was around that her husband didn't like me. He was always serious around me, and never actually spoke to me. Years went on, and it just went to total no talking at all. My dad got married to my stepmom when I was 10, and she's really great. So 9 months ago, I heard from my grandparents on Facebook that Tommy passed. I don't know the full details. All I know is it was some accident and he had serious injuries. Thought about reaching out to my mom, but it felt weird since we haven't talked in years. She ended up the one messaging me. First telling me about what happened to Tommy and then apologizing for not keeping contact with me for years. Pretty much she wants to meet and for us to have a relationship again. It just felt off to me that she's doing it only now after Tommy passed. I know some of you are gonna say losing him maybe made her realize she was a terrible mom to me, but still. If this hadn't happened, then it's like she never would have reached out and wouldn't be trying. I told her this too, and that I'm not interested in us having anything at the moment. This made her push even more that we need to do this, and it just seemed like she was not gonna let this go. So I said I'm sorry for what happened to him, but I'm not gonna be her second choice. And she can't expect me to want her back in just because she lost one child and decided she'll go back to the other. Maybe in the future if I feel differently, but not right now. My mom has left me alone. And when last time I talked to my grandparents, they gave me a crap about what I told her. And I shouldn't have said that to her after she's lost her son. So I'm not sure if what I said was too harsh, saying I'm not interested in her right now just because my brother's not around anymore. And it's like I'm just her only option now. It's just how I feel since she dropped out of my life once she had another family. Was I an a-hole? Not an a-hole in the slightest, in my opinion. This shouldn't be questioning your head, man. Don't feel bad about not wanting a relationship. She ditched you for her other son, and now only wants you now that he's gone? Bug off. This is harsh, but that's karma. Completely up to you. But she doesn't deserve you, pal. Exactly. Opie's not a plan B? This is such a bad thing to do to a child. The mother wants emotional support, not Opie. She wants something to love to help her over her grief and regrets. I hope she won't get anything of Opie. And what if the mom gets another child or dog or something, and will just kick Opie to the curb again? Just horrible. She did it once, she will do it again. Not an a-hole, and your grandparents are also the a-holes if they've watched the situation unfold over years, and only now decided to intervene. Even if she's genuinely regretting the past, that's her problem because that was entirely her actions that put her in this place now. You aren't an emotional support animal that she can pick up when she needs it. It's very reasonable you don't want to be subbed in for Tommy when you were already swapped for him once. She's going to need to demonstrate that she wants to get to know you as a person, not a substitute son. And she's got a lot of explaining to do. She made you a stranger. She doesn't get to call in strangers for help. Exactly this. Where were they the whole time your mother ignored you? You never even met your brother. How bad is that? What did they say about that? My son died. But wait, I got a spare, don't I? Not a hole. This. Block her on social media and tell your grandparents that your decision on this is final for the time being, and that if they can't respect your choice, then you'll restrict contact with them. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not wanting to discuss my deceased sister? Before I, 19 female, was born, my parents had another kid, Hannah. When Hannah was 8, she died due to an accident and I was born 2 years later. Growing up, she was constantly mentioned. We went to her grave multiple times a year, pictures were hung in our house, stories were told. I wouldn't say it overshone me in any way, I still got to be my own person. My parents never wanted me to be Hannah, and they celebrated my accomplishments. But still, she was always talked about, and I was always told I had a sister, asked how I felt about her, and it took me years to admit to myself that I feel nothing for her. I never met her, and due to her death, she's always been made into this saint-like figure. It's like she's this person I've watched documentaries about. I have respect for her, but I don't consider her my sister. If others ask if I have siblings, I say no. Now that I'm living on my own, I don't visit Hannah. I don't display the pictures of her that my parents gave to me over the years. I've told a few close friends and my ex as I felt they had a right to know, but outside that, there's nothing to discuss. Recently, my mom was talking about Hannah a lot. I've told her before I don't want to talk about Hannah anymore, but she doesn't listen. The other day, she kept going on about a story I've heard a million times, and I said, I thought I told you I was done talking about her. My mom replied, she's your sister. And I said, technically, maybe. My mom got really offended, and I pointed out we weren't raised together. I don't know her. I feel nothing for her. My mom started crying and called me heartless. She said that I don't have to discuss Hannah, but she's not going to stop just because I want to pretend she never existed. My dad has said what I said about Hannah is near unforgivable, and I need to reevaluate my priorities. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. You're the a-hole. I understand your view here, and I don't really think you are an a-hole. But in this situation, it is you. You feel nothing for her, but your parents do. They raised her until she was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and then she died. Their baby died, dude. People say it is the worst possible thing to go through in your life. They need some way to get through it. So I totally understand how you might not feel anything for her yourself, But in my opinion, it isn't that hard to humor your parents a bit about their dead kid. I was going to say this, especially because it doesn't sound like Opie's parents tried to turn Opie into Hannah 2.0 or neglect Opie in any way as a result of their grief for Hannah. It seems like they just tried to keep the memory of their daughter alive. Yes, Opie's parents want to keep Hannah's memory alive, and they will always have 2 kids. But Opie has always effectively been an only child. I think Opie's parents need to understand Opie's sympathy about the situation is always going to be skewed because when you grew up with a hardship being the norm, your brain doesn't necessarily understand that it is a hardship and wasn't always the norm and the pain it causes people around you. I don't think that Opie is being purposely unsympathetic. I think Opie doesn't want to feel pushed to act like she had a relationship with someone she never knew and that she feels pushed to act like she knew. I think this is no a-holes here. Because this is above Reddit's pay grade, and everyone needs family therapy. No a-holes here. If you don't want to talk about her, that's fine. In my humble opinion, it was kind of rude of your mom to keep talking about it after you repeatedly told her that you didn't want to talk about her. And it was probably frustrating just to have your parents stuck on and focused so far in the past. You deserve her full attention too, and it's frustrating for you to have to share it with someone you never met. And she is not going to stop talking about it, so you could just leave whenever she does it. No a-holes here. Both sides are perfectly within their rights. It's just a horrible situation all around. If it were me, I'd apologize for hurting their feelings, but mention that I had my boundary. They're of course free to speak about her, but you're under no obligation to engage. It's been a long time. My mother died young, and it traumatized me. But I went through grief counseling and found healthy ways to speak about her with my family. I don't talk about her much to people who have never met her, regardless of their relation to her or myself. You're the a-hole for expecting your parents to just stop with their deceased child. They raised and loved her for 8 years, then lost her. That's fine if you don't want to talk about her, but you never ever get over the loss of your child. Opie isn't expecting them to stop loving Hannah, or thinking about her, or missing her. They just don't want to be the audience for Hannah's story. This is allowed. Opie, you are allowed to not want to participate in a conversation. You're allowed to live your own life without having to feign interest in the same stories you heard over and over growing up, about a person you never met. Just keep firmly repeating the boundary with your mother, gently ending the call each time she starts in on her firstborn. She'll eventually adjust. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom that my father didn't do anything for her birthday? My mother and I can have a rocky relationship at times, but I love her more than anyone on this planet, and it was her birthday a few days back. I'm a school student, and I don't get pocket money. I don't have a job, and my parents buy me whatever I need, so I've never asked to be given any allowance. For my mom's birthday, I asked my father repeatedly to buy a cute gift. I gave him multiple options regarding what she would like. But the day before her birthday, he said he hasn't had any time, which is a big fat lie because I know he had a lot. The cake for her birthday? I spent 2 weeks asking him to book one so we would be prepared. Instead, he went and bought it 2 hours before her birthday. It was a very small celebration, just the 3 of us, but my mom was happy. My dad told her he will buy her gift soon and that he has had a busy week. Again, it's a lie. It's been 2 weeks since then, and my dad's sister is visiting. She didn't even bother wishing my mom on her birthday, and my dad asked my mom to select a gift for her sister as she's leaving. My mom asked if he had forgotten about her, if he didn't value her, and why should she buy gifts for a woman who talks trash behind her back when her own husband didn't buy her a birthday gift. A few hours later, my mom was crying, and I told her that he didn't buy anything despite me pestering him for weeks, and the cake came because I demanded it. My dad even yelled at me for bothering him about it. She was more sad, but told me that as I don't even earn money yet, and I am young, I shouldn't be worried about it. My dad found out I told her, and called me a liar, and later told me I made things worse, and I've been a bad daughter. I feel guilty, because I feel like I made things worse. Am I the a-hole? Not an a-hole, but Opie, your parents' marriage is not your responsibility. You didn't make things worse. You just didn't want to lie to your mother for your dad. Whatever happens between them is their choice, but you made your stance clear that you won't be part of this cover-up in the future. The reality is, if he cared, he would have done anything. And if your mother doesn't want to be taken for granted, she has to take steps to stop it. Whatever happens is not your fault. Oh look, straight up gaslighting. Not a-hole, OP, but your dad is manipulative as heck. Not a-hole. Good on you for doing everything you could have for your mom. Your dad sucks and is trying to blame you for a problem he created. His sister sucks too. Not a-hole. Your father is a total a-hole. Start saving up money for when you, and maybe your mother, leave. Ask for money for school and clothes, etc. regularly and save it. Try to get a job. You're gonna need money to get away from this situation. It's not dire. My mom works and has a good job, so if anything happens, it won't be bad. He's just so uncaring sometimes. This is a sign of a deeper problem, that he doesn't care enough to make an effort to be kind. If I were you, I'd give it to him straight that if it doesn't shape up his behavior, he might not have a marriage when he grows old. A person can only tolerate this kind of disrespect for so long. To ignore her birthday gift is a power play on his part. He's actively trying to see how terrible he can be to her in order to show her that she's worthless. Or maybe leave the issue alone. It may be for the best that she leaves. Your call. Am I the a-hole for not being a team player within my family so my siblings can have the best? My parents resent me for being born. They were 19 when they had me, and I ruined their plans for college and their lives. They kept me, but they told me the heat of the moment when I asked too much from them that they have expressed their resentment for me. My parents had my brothers and sisters starting when I was 8. Now I'm 17 and they have 5 kids, me included. They love my siblings, and they go above and beyond for them. Always have. And they expect me to not only be okay with that, but they want me to also go above and beyond for them. They have told me I'm not a team player, that I am not a good sister, and that I am not doing what I should as the oldest. I work and go to school. I babysit as a side gig too. I have money that I save, but I never spend it on my siblings, and it drives my parents crazy. I have been paying for my own food for the last 2 years, and I don't really interact with anyone. It came to a head about a week ago when my 7-year-old sister wanted a specific Halloween costume after she was teased for the one my parents bought her. My parents couldn't afford a new one and asked me to buy her whatever she wanted. I said no. My sister ended up asking me herself because mom and dad couldn't. And when I said no again, my parents blew a fuse and said I wasn't being a team player and I should want my siblings to have the best. They said I should love my siblings enough to make their lives the best possible, and that I should stop being selfish and immature. I told them they should have been better parents and created a family instead of making me the outsider. And that is not my job to ensure their favorite children get the life they never wanted to provide for me. They said it's not their fault they didn't want to have me. I told them it wasn't mine either, that I had no say in being born or being kept. I said I do have a say in what happens when I turn 18, and to hell with them because I was not going to keep being punished for my birth. My siblings heard the fight, and I can see they're upset that I'm not more loving and invested in them. I guess that's why I ask, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole, not in the slightest. You were not responsible for your birth. They were. It's not fair for them to consistently punish you for not acting as a third parent to their subsequent offspring. Parentification at its finest. It needed to be said. What your sibling heard was collateral damage from the truth. It would have come out one way or another. At least they found out, and can adjust their expectations. It seems like the parents are growing increasingly resentful that Opie's getting to the age they were when they had Opie, and yet doesn't have to sacrifice her life for a kid. So they're trying to make Opie do exactly that. Not the a-hole. They are being hypocrites. They resent you for ruining their lives, but they had 4 other kids aside from you, and they seem to be happy to have these other kids. If they willingly had other kids, then they can't have anything against you. They weren't a team player when not including you in the family. They were expecting you to use your hard-earned money to pay for something they want, since they couldn't get their lives together. I'm so sorry your biological parents treat you like some outsider of a benefactor and servant, who's supposed to serve and provide for their family. They are wrong, period. You're not a parent and don't deserve to be expected to be one. They expect gratitude for 17 years of mistreatment, but you are not obligated to validate their unjust demands and insane delusions. Don't let them guilt you into sacrificing yourself. Your parents scapegoated you for their poor decisions, which is a truly disgusting thing of them to have done. I do have sympathy for the younger kids as they seem to be caught in the middle of this, and as a result are missing out on an older sibling and all the cool benefits that can come along with that. This. Opie should get the hell out of that situation as soon as humanly possible, but should also try to connect with her siblings. Just as Opie had no choice, neither did they. As long as the children aren't entitled or treat Opie any differently, they are their own persons and may want a totally different and far more positive relationship. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not giving my adopted parents the money they needed I got from my dad's parents? So I always had a great relationship with my parents. I was adopted at birth and told when I was a toddler. Everything was fine until I turned 16/17. My parents were both in their late 30s and decided it wasn't too late, and that with the advance of fertility technology in the years, it is possible they could still have a biological baby. I was a bit hurt they wanted a biological child so badly, especially after years and years, and told them they should foster, but they said no. They wanted another try. A lot of their word choices hurt me. I'm now 23. They have been trying for a baby using IVF and other methods to no avail. My mother is now 46. Not trying to be ageist or anything, but it can be hard to conceive even with fertility treatment. When my parents, who went from being doting and loving to now contacting me twice a month since I moved out at 21, invited me over for dinner, I was so happy, got ready and everything, and drove an hour and a half away. To my surprise, the dinner was just an excuse for my parents to ask me if I could carry one of their last embryos for them, and that they would help me pay off my student loans. I was so offended and felt like an incubator. They barely speak to me, and they only invited me to ask me that 10 minutes into it. I left their house in tears. Sadly, just a week later, my grandfather, Dad's dad, passed away. After the funeral, I told my grandma why I wasn't talking to my parents at the service since we were always close, and she was so shocked at what they asked me. She told me she'd give me the money they promised to my dad from my grandfather's insurance to pay off my loans. When my parents found out, they've been texting me begging me to give them just a portion of the money for their treatments. They wouldn't even need me and they'd hire a surrogate and that they were sorry. I said no, and now they've been calling me the biggest a-hole and saying I'm being greedy. Even some families say I'm being too hard by not giving them anything. Haven't even gotten the money yet, and me and my grandma are being painted out as the major a-holes. Are we? I only have money left over I pay my loans, but they aren't much. It has been their dream for years, and I'm overreacting by the request. I'm so sorry your parents are being like this. You did nothing wrong. They have no claim to your body like that. Being a surrogate for family is something you should do because you want to, not because they are holding money over your head. Now that I'm getting the money, they're saying it's not about that they asked me to carry their baby. I'm just being selfish because I want to be the only child. Even though that's not why I just feel hurt, they had asked me that like I'm not their daughter. It's cemented that they don't see me as their daughter anymore. They're begging my grandma to give me only exact enough for my loans, and giving them the rest like they were promised. I feel bad because my mom was crying about it and she said she regrets asking me, but I feel like she's just saying that because she didn't think my grandma would take the money back. I don't know. I'm conflicted. Don't feel bad, hon. I am appalled at how they treated you, and they should be ashamed of themselves. You don't owe them anything, and good on grandma for recognizing how despicable their behavior has been. They don't deserve a baby after how they treated you. She regrets it because she's not getting what she wants anymore. It doesn't sound like the apologies were coming in when it was just about your hurt feelings. She's 46. However much I get her dream, it is time to call it quits. They got so obsessed they forgot they already had a daughter and neglected you. Now they're trying to use you as an incubator and cash cow for their shriveled up dreams. Anti-A, anti-A, anti-A. The selfishness is off the charts here. With a mother at 46, that kid would be almost certain to have some form of permanent health issues or disabilities. Wow. I'm curious as to how they would have paid off your loans if they're crying out for money now. Sounds like something they would have backtracked on, given their behavior. I'm sorry that you're going through this. Your grandma sounds like a great lady. Keep her close and mute the negativity. Their reproductive stuff is not your fault, your issue or your responsibility. Good luck. Next story. Am I the a-hole for making my daughters take my friend's daughter on their trip? My 46 female twin daughters, 21 female Tori and Tammy, are both in college and they're planning to do a 2-week trip to Italy, and I'm paying everything as a birthday gift. My best friend Diane has a daughter, 18 female Lori, and she has been worried because Lori has no friends. My daughters and Lori used to be closer when they were little, but grew apart when they became teenagers. Diane asked me if my daughters could try to include Lori in their social lives so she isn't lonely all the time. I called Tammy about this, and she felt bad about Lori, so she has been talking more to her since. They invited Lori to their dorm one time and go out with her a few times. I thought that the next step was to invite Lori to the trip to Italy. First, I talked with Diane about it and she agreed. She said that Lori has been happier since she started seeing my daughters again. Diane said that if my daughters agreed, she would pay for Lori to go to Italy with them. But when I talked to them, they were not happy with the idea. They say that Lori is too childish and would prevent them from having more adult fun in Italy. I think they are being really selfish and mean. Also ungrateful to me, considering I'm paying for everything. We have been arguing, and I more or less said that Lori's going with them, even if they don't want to. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. You're the a-hole. Your daughters are grown-up young ladies. We shouldn't be making playdates for them anymore. They might enjoy Lori's company for dinner or an outing, but they don't want to spend 2 weeks with her. You are giving a gift with strings attached, which is not a nice thing to do. Heck, I have some fantastic friends that I'm close to but I'm not interested in traveling with. Our respective personalities wouldn't make us good travel buddies, and that's okay. It doesn't mean we're not good friends. Can we also focus on there maybe being a real reason this girl doesn't have any friends? I guess it's her copter mom. Probably micromanaged her friend group so intensely that Lori has no clue how to make her own friends. Mom, you're the a-hole. I appreciate your kind mom's heart that feels for that 18-year-old, but your daughters are 21, and there's a big difference in those 3 years. It's not ungrateful at all. It's a gift you chose to give them. They didn't ask for it. Why should they have to accommodate someone else on their trip and be responsible for her? Lori has no friends, but it isn't your daughter's responsibility to make up for that. Please let them go on a trip for their birthday by themselves. It's not fair. Lori can learn to make her own friends. Those girls have already done as you asked and included her in their regular social lives. Let them go to Italy. This right here. Let your daughters have their time together and don't force them to bring someone along they don't particularly want to. If you do, they'll just end up resenting you every time they remember the trip. The biggest mistake you made was to talk with Diane about Lori going before you spoke to your daughters. General rule, always clear this kind of thing first with the folk who are impacted most if it goes through, and last with the folks who are impacted most if it doesn't go through. This way, if your twins rejected idea, like they have, then Lori doesn't have any hopes built up that get dashed. I just hope Diane ever told Lori about it, otherwise this will crush her. What's worse is that Lori will blame Tori and Tammy, and this will drive a wedge between them and their relationship. Hell, it's a no-win, even if you do end up forcing Lori to go to Italy with Tori and Tammy. Lori isn't stupid, she'll realize that she isn't wanted there. All forcing her to go will do is breed more resentment. Tori and Tammy versus Lori for her intruding on what should have been a sister's trip, and Lori versus Tori and Tammy for not wanting her there. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for not visiting my parents when my sister is around with her kid? I, 25 female, have 2 sisters, 28 female and 31 female. My oldest sister has a kid. I'm also planning on having kids in the future, and I love kids, but sometimes I get exhausted around them. I love my own kid, and I'm hoping to be the best mother ever, but I can't stand the expectation that I have to constantly like other people's kids and always be willing to care for them no matter what. Let's call the middle sister Kate and the oldest Jenny. Jenny has totally changed since having a kid. She used to want to stay child-free, but after an unplanned pregnancy, she decided to keep the kid, and she is now a stay-at-home mom. But since then, she's not the greatest person. She expects everyone to be her maid and her kid's babysitter. When she's around, she expects everyone to be 100% focused on her kid, and if you're not, she'll shame you for being a child hater. She's unbearable. My sister Kate has always been a people pleaser, and she does everything to seem like the good sister and aunt, even if it means putting her own needs aside. That's her choice, and I don't necessarily mind, but I'm not like that. I play with a kid, care for the kid, but I can't always be running behind a kid at all times. Whenever my sister is visiting my house, she's never checking her kid and expects everyone else to do so. Same thing when she visits my parents. The last time she visited my place, her kid broke a vintage porcelain doll my fiancé had gifted me, which used to belong to his grandma. It was very sentimental. And when my sister barely reacted to the kid breaking my doll, she also said I'm not a kid to be sad over a fricking doll and told me to get over it. She blamed me for not watching her kid, And if I had watched her, she wouldn't have broken my doll. I told her that unless she starts caring for her own kid, she won't be allowed in my house. A few days later, I had visited my parents. Jenny was there and so was Kate. Kate was always making comments about how heartless I am because I don't pay attention to the kid. She accused me of hating the kid and claimed she's the better aunt. Jenny laughed with Kate about it. They then started making fun of me for being sad about the doll. I said it's not just about the doll, but about the expectations she put on other people. My parents and my sister Kate sided with Jenny and said I should be grateful she's warming me up just in time to also be a mom. I said I've had enough of being bullied into watching her kid. And while I love the kid, I won't visit my parents whenever Jenny's around because I feel exhausted both physically and emotionally when the mocking takes place. They said I'm being dramatic and I should get over myself. They claim I'm also a child hater if I refuse to watch and play with the kid all the time. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your family sounds exhausting. I've never understood why people think they don't need to supervise their own kids just because there are other adults in the same area/house. Her kids are her responsibility. Even if someone else is playing with their child, it's still up to the parents to monitor their behavior and correct them and generally meet their needs, like food and hydration and toileting needs, etc. I'm exhausted because I'm blamed for not being behind her kid 24/7. When I dare have my own interests and life, I'm accused of not loving her kid. They even say that to the kid that Aunt X doesn't love you as much Aunt Kate loves you more, which is ridiculous. They're conditioning the kid to see me as someone who doesn't love her. Yes, refuse to be around your sister, who is entitled and a bully. If your parents or other sister give you crap when you visit, calmly say you refuse to be manipulated and leave. No drama, yelling or flouncing out the door. Just calmly say, okay, gotta go, and do it. Every single time. If they still won't stop, even knowing you'll leave when they start up, they've demonstrated that they don't value you as a person, only someone to push around. Then you'll have no qualms at going low contact. I'm sorry, but your family sounds awful. You should be grateful she's warming you up? No. Her kid, her responsibility. It would be different if she specifically asked you to watch her kid for a certain period of time, like if she had to run an errand. But she just can't assume everyone in eyesight is now automatically a babysitter, and she can relax and ignore the child. Not stay home for setting and enforcing boundaries. She and my parents shame me for not keeping my eye on kid 24/7 whenever I'm around my sister. They tell the kid that I don't love her. My sister doesn't work and she's responsible for her house and her kid, yet expects everyone else to do the work for her. She only goes out for coffee and drinks with her friends and expects my mom to babysit my niece all the time. And my mom also cleans my sister's house and cooks for her and her husband. My sister and her husband do nothing to care for their own house and family.